Here's what's coming up on the program. A new pact is made between the US, the UK and Australia to counter China's influence in the Pacific. French President Emmanuel Macron says head of the Islamic group in the Sahara has been killed by French troops. Plus, France suspends 3,000 health workers over non-COVID-19 vaccinations. Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. We begin with China denouncing the historic security pact between the UK, the US and Australia, describing it as extremely irresponsible and narrow-minded. The pact will see the US and the UK provide Australia with the technology to build nuclear-powered submarines for the first time. It is being widely viewed as an effort to counter China's influence in the contested China Sea.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry decried the new partnership, saying the three countries are damaging regional peace and stability. China says it will closely monitor the situation, even though leaders did not mention China by name in the announcement made on Wednesday by US President Joe Biden. Under the partnership, the United States will provide Australia with the technology and capability to deploy nuclear-powered submarines. The U.S. stresses that the move, which comes as Washington and its allies are looking for ways to push back against China's growing power and influence, would not involve provision of nuclear weapons to Australia. They say the submarines will not be deployed with atomic weaponry, but would allow the Australian Navy to operate more quietly for longer periods and provide deterrence across Indo-Pacific.
This is about investing in our greatest source of strength, our alliances, and updating them to better meet the threats of today and tomorrow. It's about connecting America's existing allies and partners in new ways and amplifying our ability to collaborate, recognizing there is no regional divide separating the interests of our Atlantic and Pacific partners.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Australia is a neutral partner for the partnership with the United States and calls the deal a momentous decision for the country to acquire the technology, while stressing that the submarines would not be equipped with weapons.
We're opening a new chapter in our friendship, and the first task of this partnership will be to help Australia acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, emphasizing, of course, that the submarines in question will be powered by nuclear reactors, not armed with nuclear weapons. And our work will be fully in line with our non-proliferation obligations.
The new partnership ends Australia's 2016 deal with French shipbuilder Naval Group to build a submarine fleet worth $40 billion to replace its more than 2 decades-old Collins submarines. It does say that France will remain an important partner to Australia.
I want to stress that France remains an incredibly important partner in the Pacific. There is few, if any, other country around the world which understands the importance of the Pacific and has been as committed to the Pacific as France.
However, France has accused United States President Joe Biden of stabbing it in the back and acting like his predecessor, Donald Trump, when France was pushed aside from the lucrative defense deal. 2 weeks ago, the Australian and foreign ministers had reconfirmed the deal to France, and French President Emmanuel Macron lauded decades of future cooperation when hosting the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison in June. Washington's actions in Australia are likely to further strain transatlantic ties. The European Union was due to roll out its Indo-Pacific strategy later today, and Paris is preparing to take on the EU presidency.
Now, speaking of the European Union and its plans for security, Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says a new pact with Australia shows that the European Union must develop its own defense and security strategies in the Indo-Pacific. He also offered that he was not consulted on Wednesday's agreement for Washington to help Canberra build a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, cancelling a deal with France to design diesel-electric submarines. Following an initial plan in April, the EU set out 7 areas in which it would increase influence in the Indo-Pacific: in health, security, data infrastructure, the environment, trade, and oceans.
We wish to cooperate from East Africa to the Pacific, and this includes China. On many areas, such as climate and biodiversity, China's cooperation is essential. Our strategy is one of cooperation, not confrontation. We will explore ways to ensure an enhanced naval deployment by our member states in the region, taking into account the lessons learned from the first assessment of the coordinated maritime presence concept. We will assess the opportunity of establishing maritime areas of interest in the Indo-Pacific and engage with our partners in the region.
Let's talk now to foreign affairs analyst Calvin Dark. He joins me from Washington. Calvin, great to see you as always. This is a pretty interesting deal. But what is even more interesting, Calvin, is how upset France is that it is not part of it. And that's because they're losing out, in the end, losing a huge financial commitment as Australia turns to the US and the UK for those submarines. The French defense minister has likened the announcement to the same attitude put up by former President Donald Trump. Should France have been sidelined from this deal, and what difference would it have made had they been included?
Well, I have to say that when I was first learning of this, my first question was, why did we do this to France? I didn't quite see why they weren't involved. And so that was the kind of question that I went into it at first. But I realized that I think the reason why the Biden administration did it was President Macron and, France, as they assume the presidency of the EU, has kind of made very clear that while they're going to have their own strategy towards China, it's not going to be like the U.S.'s strategy, that they're not going to follow the U.S. They're going to try to strike a middle ground of, strategic partnership that may put them at odds sometimes with the United States. And I think that's part of the reason behind why the Biden administration pursued this deal with the UK and Australia. Also, too, the UK, with Boris Johnson particularly, is trying to establish their kind of foreign policy goals and presence, now being a part of the EU. So this, of course, feeds into that. I do have to say, when it comes to, this being kind of Trump-esque, they're kind of right in the sense that if there's a strategy, it hadn't been communicated to our partners, and this decision wasn't communicated to them in a timely manner, which I can definitely understand why the French foreign minister was so perturbed.
Yeah, and it does seem like, the rest of Europe is trying to understand America's foreign policy post-Trump. This pact, however, all boils down to weakening China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Again, we're talking about something former President Donald Trump pursued while he was in office. But China says this is extremely irresponsible. The focus on China. You think this deal could prove effective in its goal to weaken China's influence? Or are leaders just simply missing the point about China?
Now, when it comes to U.S. relations with the EU and other partners on China, that I don't think this deal is going to help. But now, when it comes to how the U.S. deals with China and how they kind of sketch out where their partners are in the region, I do think this helps. It shows that the United States is taking this seriously. I think one of the things that President Biden, what he's running into, is former President Trump did a lot of things in a way that a lot of folks didn't agree with inside and outside of this country, but we are where we are, and some people kind of want to keep it like that. And by that, I mean this kind of heightened state of tension with China to let them know that we're serious about economic and other strategic issues between us.
Indeed. Once again, we hear from the EU. Yesterday, it was the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen calling for a military force for EU to be able to ward off, enemies. But once again, we're hearing, that call, the strong call for military defense. So if anything, the Afghanistan crisis has proven that other countries, especially the EU, depended heavily or still depend heavily on America, and now they're trying to establish their independence. Josep Borrell described their own strategy as cooperation, not confrontation, which probably explains, what you were saying, Calvin. But do you think that a joint military force for Europe might escalate tensions, in the Indo-Pacific or its relations with China, considering the rhetoric that has been going on over the years, especially under former President Donald Trump?
Yes, I think that's going to be difficult because let me tell you, as we're all aware, during President Trump's term, he raised the issue of NATO and our cooperation with EU partners. And, he always talked about it in the context of, the United States is being taken advantage of financially, we should be paid back, all of that kind of stuff. Well, regardless of what people think about that, he made it part of the discussion. People weren't talking about that at that level before Donald Trump. And so now people realize that our alliances, there's this perception among a lot of Americans that, we're being taken advantage of, or that we could be taken advantage of, or that we're fighting someone else's fight because they don't want to spend the money or the troops or what have you. So I do think that's going to be a lot more careful. And even though Biden's position and approach is different than Trump's, he's got to deal with the reality of the post-Trump world and how Americans think about military cooperation with our allies, even in Europe.
Calvin, as always, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining us on the program. And of course, stay safe.
Thank you. Okay.
North Korea has released a video showing its test of a new railway-borne missile system. A missile launched on Wednesday flew 800 kilometers before striking a target in the sea off North Korea's east coast. A video showed an olive green missile rising on a column of smoke and flame from the roof of a train parked on tracks in a mountainous area. South Korean and Japanese authorities said they had detected the launch of 2 ballistic missiles from North Korea just days after it tested a cruise missile that analysts said could have nuclear capabilities. The North Korean launches came the same day that South Korea tested a submarine-launched ballistic missile, becoming the first country without nuclear weapons to develop such a system. The two Koreas have been in an increasingly heated arms race, with both sides unveiling more capable missiles and other weapons. France's President Emmanuel Macron says the head of the Islamic State group in the Sahara has been killed by French troops. Adnan Abu Walid al-Zahrawi formed Islamic State in the Greater Sahara in 2015. The group is blamed for most attacks in the region, including the targeted killing of French aid workers in 2020. Mr. Macron called Sahrawi's death another major success in the fight against terrorist groups in the Sahel. Sahrawi was born in the disputed territory of Western Sahara in 1973. He'd been a member of the Polisario Front, which is fighting for independence from Morocco. He later joined Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and co-led Mujal, a Malian Islamist group responsible for kidnapping Spanish aid workers in Algeria, and a group of Algerian diplomats in Mali in 2012. France says last August, Sahrawi personally ordered the killing of 6 French charity workers and their Nigerian guides and drivers. We'll have more on the world today coming up after the break. Plus, like to be an astronaut for a day? The Zero Gravity Experience can help you out. Stay with us. Welcome back. West African leaders are gathered in Accra, Ghana, to determine how the region's main political and economic bloc can steer Guinea back towards constitutional rule following the coup that ousted President Alpha Condé last week. The 15-nation Economic Community of West African states condemned the coup and has suspended Guinea from the bloc's decision-making bodies. Leaders are actually there to hear a report from a ministerial mission that went to Guinea's capital, Conakry, on Friday to meet the ruling junta.
We are required to take informed decisions on these matters that will have long-term consequences for the stability and the defense of the democratic values of our region. I count on you, Excellencies, to help proffer durable solutions to the crisis. And I'm confident that, as in the past, we will rise to the occasion.
France has suspended about 3,000 health workers over not being vaccinated against the coronavirus. A new rule which came into force on Wednesday made vaccination mandatory for the country's 2.7 million health, care home and fire service staff. The country's health minister says most of the suspensions are only temporary. There's more in the global update.
The suspensions have not gone down well with the health workers. One of them, Thierry Pesson, has decided to protest his. He says while he's not against the vaccination itself, he's against people being forced to get the shot or risk losing their jobs. He's now on a hunger strike, hoping to amplify the voices of ordinary people who are uncomfortable about the vaccine mandates.
Yes. You're happy to have your booster dose today? Yes.
Over in the UK, England has launched its COVID-19 booster vaccination campaign with members of the National Health Service receiving the first doses. Staff at Croydon University Hospital in London say they were feeling confident going into winter after having the booster jabs. Booster vaccinations will be given at least 6 months after people received their second dose of COVID-19 vaccines, meaning the rollout will roughly form a key plank of plans to navigate the winter without further lockdowns. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he would have to spend a few days in self-isolation after dozens of people in his entourage fell ill with COVID. He was speaking through a video link at a summit of a Russia-led security bloc which was held in Tajikistan. He had planned to attend in person before the news on the virus outbreak in his inner circle this week. Finally, Italy's government is set to make its COVID-19 Green Pass mandatory for all workers, becoming the first European country to do so, as it tries to accelerate vaccinations and stamp out infections. The measure is expected to come into effect in October.
Back home, the British Deputy High Commission in Lagos has hosted a pre-departure reception to bid farewell to the 2021-2022 cohort of Nigerian Chevening scholars. After a rigorous selection process, 50 Nigerians have been awarded the scholarship to pursue their master's degree across various universities in the UK. Since 1983, over 50,000 professionals from around the world have benefited from the prestigious award. Our correspondent, Teniola Shobowale, reports.
A new journey begins here for the recipients of the 2021-2022 Chevening Scholarship as they prepare for their studies in the UK.
Exciting opportunities ahead.
In his opening remarks, the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos congratulates the awardees on their success and their resilience.
You're going to get to travel to the UK and study, I think, is testament to your resilience.
Out of thousands who applied from across the world, 50 Nigerians were successful, chosen from different walks of life.
I feel so elated, honestly. I feel so glad. I feel so happy, so glad because it's a rare opportunity. It is.
I look forward to learning a lot, research and analytical skills, and to bring the lessons learned back to come and help the health sector.
This year, one fellow is also selected. The president of the Chevening Alumni Association of Nigeria, Kesta Osahenye, alongside many other alumni and guests, are here to felicitate with the new scholars.
It should bring back home those values from the UK, the friendship that Nigeria and the UK has established all over the years. They should bring back innovative ideas that will help move our country forward.
We have so many great Cheveners amongst us.
Chairman, Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momo, is also a Chevener, and he urges the young professionals to use the opportunity to bring change to Nigeria.
Those 365 days should be days that will impact on your lives. Make them special. So that when you come back, as you think about the problems that Nigeria is grappling with, you try to fathom some solutions about what you're going to do when you get back to impact on our great country, Nigeria. So change is in the horizon. It is to be led by chieftains. Because what chieftains don't do is wait for change. They make things happen.
Chieftain awards are highly competitive, and to be selected for an award is a mark of potential and prestige.
8,000 applications, 7,000 eligible applications, and 50 lucky recipients. And we think it's just an excellent opportunity for us, but also really for those Nigerians to enrich themselves, to study, to learn. And COVID's been a really tough time. So the prospect of going to the UK, having that study experience, and all hopefully of the richness of the experience of living in the UK, it's fantastic for them and fantastic for us.
Chieftains are expected to return home at the end of their studies, equipped with new knowledge, networks, qualifications, and confidence to implement positive change. Teniola Shobowale, Channels Television News.
They're going to have a great time in the UK. Now, as many of us watch with envy as billionaire space enthusiasts blast off into space, there is one way to feel what it's like to float weightlessly in the air. The zero-gravity experience promises adventure travelers the ultimate experience. For the cost of $7,500 per person, you can book a 90-minute trip on board the G-Force One. Inside the modified plane, about 2/3 of it is open space to experience what it feels like when there is no gravity to hold you down. Participants can float, flip, somersaults, hang upside down if they want. So here's how it works. The plane begins flying at an altitude of about 24,000 feet. Pilots then increase the angle of the aircraft and then the altitude and push up over the top of the parabolic arc. And that's when passengers feel weightless and begin to float. This lasts for about 20 to 30 seconds until the plane descends back down to 24,000, and then gravity pulls passengers down to the floor. Pilots repeat this maneuver about 15 times during the 90-minute flight, with the passengers feeling all the ups and downs.
So it is, the ultimate experience. You can't top it. That is the one thing that's for sure. The only way you can top this is to maybe go up on Elon's rocket for 60 mil, or in a couple of years, Richard and Jeff's suborbitals for a significant amount of money. And the only difference between them and us is you get more zero-G time with us, but you get a great view with them.
Just one advice, though, don't go with a full stomach. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Rubani.